Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Galactic Intraversal Consortium. Today's episode is being recorded on 10/12/25. This is our Halloween episode, folks, so get ready. This is going to be a very interesting one. Barring any more, no more distractions before we got going today, I think this is going to be an excellent one. So I now open this circle to true benevolence and no conflicting agendas as of this moment in time. So, Joanna?
We are all one, and when one is harmed, all are harmed. When one is helped, all are helped. Therefore, in the name of who I am, and I am one with all there is, that only the highest good be done. We pray for you, your friends, your family, your loved ones, to let healing energies in. Let them love you, let them nourish you, and let them bring you to your highest good. We ask for benevolence now to come in with no conflicting agenda, so that we may have this conversation in great understanding. And we ask for malevolent or mischievous type beings to be swept away, so that we may have this conversation in peace. And with that, and with great blessings that we always send your way, we say, so be it.
And so be it.
So be it.
Okay, this is we're starting to go back onto some of this other galactic history that you've probably heard this 1,000 times, but we are going back onto the vampire contagion this time. That's why I entitled this episode Vampirus Immortalis, meaning the immortal vampire. I found out a lot of new information surrounding this, but I will bullet point this. Let me see here. All right. Oop, I did not mean to have that up there or that. Okay. So I will just do the brief bullet point on where this actually came in. And I truly believe that this nugget, that some of these nuggets that I'm going to give you have a bit of propaganda mixed in here because of the fact of what I actually know now about this. So I can clearly see when something is not right. So it's history of vampires spans from ancient folklore to modern fiction, with modern vampire myth originating in the 18th century Eastern Europe. Now, it being extremely ancient, I don't think so. That was just a regurgitation where it was being fictionalized. Ancient beliefs, many cultures had myths about demons or spirits that preyed on living, representing earlier precursors to the vampire. I mean, I know the word vampire came in later, but this is actually quite interesting when I popped this up in AI overview, what actually came up and what did not. So examples, Greek myths featured the Lemia, who drank blood, and ancient texts mention spirits that fed on the dead. Ghouls can fall under what we've said about Neanderthals in the past, fall under that particular category. But also in Bulgaria, I found out they actually consider anything that's a demon to be a vampire. They use that word a lot. So I'll look over here. And the folk beliefs, the notion of vampirism has existed for millennia. Cultures such as Mesopotamians, Hebrews, ancient Greeks, Manipuri, and Romans had tales of demons and spirits which are considered precursors to modern vampires. Despite the occurrence of vampiric creatures in these ancient civilizations, the folklore for the entity known today as the vampire originates almost exclusively from early 18th century southeastern Europe, when verbal traditions of many ethnic groups of the region were recorded and published. And also we know of Transylvania, Romania, all of those. That also holds the werewolf mythology as well, and Czechoslovakia and all those places. But here's the kicker. You have Bram Stoker's Dracula that actually wrote the book. The ending of the book is telling, to where that he's not only channeling some information, but there's some real information as to how to deal with a being that had the vampire contagion. So in the end of the book, him and Harker, Van Helsing and Harker, go to a desert island. They weaken Dracula with the sun, and they also weaken him with a stake to the heart. And they cut his head off, and they burn him. This is how they actually kill Dracula at the end. And what ended up happening is that is how you kill a Draco Reptilian, but this is also how you kill a vampire. He listed exactly how to do it. So I thought that was quite interesting. There's multiple variations of the vampire contagion. You have this recombinant like virus that has all these weird variants. You had the plant demon entity that you've heard me talk about ad nauseum, that's under house that spreads radioactive spores. This was born of the vampire contagion. You have the Nosferatu look, that's an Orion variation. That also, or an elfish variation that had its ties into Enlil's garbage on Atlantis, where it was like the sorceress from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, where with the apple, the whole bit. That also stretches back to the Tuatha De Danann versus the Fomorian wizards. That's where the Lord of the Rings material came from. That will be another episode we can touch on Tolkien's material at some point in the future here. But the crux of what I'm getting at is vampires actually are alien, and or the originator of the virus was alien. That's Orion. You've heard us talk about this, but the new information that I've come across is that vampires themselves is a race out there that are the fanged kind that you hear about in lore, the ones that like Interview with the Vampire or like True Blood or any of those series. Not Twilight, those are a different type of thing that they're actually presenting in there. They're mixing a tall white and vampire in that because of the shimmer. That gives it away. But the whole Shining Ones thing, that gives it away. But this is more of an alien species that formed from the vampiric contagion. We had a detail backwards in the origination of the contagion and how it actually formed its own race after a while. And some details we got backwards because we didn't have some of the middle information. We had the stuff from a long time ago, of which we I know is going to come through in the channel, but then we had this middle area here that fits right nicely into some of the galactic history we have been talking about. And the werewolf one too. The werewolf, the one that turns people into werewolves, the howling at the moon, changing all that whole bit. If you guys want to see that, let us know. So this is actually quite interesting as to who wanted to talk today. And I was actually quite surprised at this. There's actually were a couple of them. And you might not be surprised given the vocation that these two were in. They're both musicians, and these two came from spirit. One that wanted to come in and speak today was David Bowie, believe it or not. And he basically there were these two phrases that both him and Ozzy Osbourne left for me with this, and I thought this was quite interesting. Even though we don't normally do the affirmations blessings on GIC, I will actually read for you what they said here. I thought this was actually quite interesting. The one by Bowie was this: I loved, I lost, I died and was reborn. In fact, the word born, quote unquote, does not mean what anyone thinks that it means. So to be reborn, one must have been born at all. To the immortal vampire, I sing of cleansing. To the stars from which I came, I salute you still today. Channeling of actor, singer, songwriter, and playwright David Bowie. And I just found this actually quite interesting. And this one was from Ozzy. I like this one too. To Halloween, I say, bring it on. Ha ha ha. I thrive as the souls of the damned roam. I shine as they find their new home within the corners of their minds and their souls. I see new horizons. I speak new truths. New to you and to me, but to soul it is but a whisper, a moment of sorrow, an awakening, and an eternal itch that must be scratched. I am whole again. Mama, I came home once again. Singer and songwriter Ozzy Osbourne. So this told me a transition of him completely into spirit. But they both made it quite clear that they wanted to say something on this episode, and it fits Ozzy more to do this kind of Halloween episode. But the viruses that are involved, I did a show way back when about the vampire contagion when we were talking with Moses quite a while ago. I can also include that because there's still valuable information in there, but, and I must disclaimer this part before anybody ever sees that one again. That particular episode, I did channel the brat at the end of that episode. The information held, regardless of his lying that we have talked about repeatedly, the information was still true. With what that had to do with the contagion itself. So I am going to hold that firm because I noticed his energy does not go through that particular recording. But I must disclaimer that as of this moment in time before it ever sees the light of day again. No pun intended. Bjorn, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, I'm curious to what their take on this is because we know that there was very much a galactic and intraversal path of this virus and contagion. Yeah, I look forward to it. Let's make sure we do blessing the law of one and open the circle for them.
We did the law of one already, but I will reaffirm this. I now open the circle of true benevolence with no conflicting agendas at this moment in time. Service on multiple sessions. Okay, which one of you? I can feel you both, but there is some apprehension below from a third party. So, extreme apprehension from a third party. So. Actually, I've challenged you once before, Ozzy. How about I just pick this time? Is that okay with both of you? All right. Benevolent Ozzy Osbourne from Spirit as of this moment in time. You're more than welcome to step forward. So, and David, there's something you're connected to I'm not too keen on, but maybe Ozzy will bring some light to that. Okay? All right. Yeah. With his story, there was a movie he did, and I will say this briefly, that David Bowie did, where he was an alien that came to Earth and he got hooked into our vices. And he lost it was basically a story of losing more connection to spirit and to galactic history, and you get embroiled into vices. That is actually his true story as a galactic being that came up. That's why why do you think he portrayed himself the way he did? Alien. And Ozzy came in, we found out, to bring light to the dark, but by taking that low vibration of, like, say, metal music and everything, and bringing all you can do is go up from that point. So, technically speaking. So, I find this interesting, Ozzy, that you wanted to actually do this particular one, but it doesn't completely because you were into that. And so.
I just want to add too before you start, Chris, is that if we say any names or specific beings, that we revoke their presence and we're not invoking them.
Yes, exactly. Like with the brat, for instance.
Yeah.
So that's why we call him the brat, folks. It's one of those things you either know or you don't. I'm not going to actually say his actual name right here. So if you look back at the older GIC material, you're going to find that. So, okay. Benevolent Ozzy? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. And true benevolence. There's a lot of spirit showing up here. So, okay. I believe Odin is present somewhere too. So.
Well, that's good. I just asked them to come.
Yeah, I can feel
Keep
it.
an eye on things for us.
All right. Something is shifting. Give me one moment. All right. You're over there. Okay. Ooh. I was pleased and honored to actually do this episode as well. Because of the fact that, let's just say it was my style, in all actuality. It is weird that he has a beard here. I did not have facial hair. Anyway, my spirit, from what you read, I went up a notch, let's just say. I may not sound the same as even I did before. With this, you are dealing with, how can I put this? Much more information than you were told before. Yes, virus can infect. Bite of the vampire, then passes it on. That's its way of procreation, like any virus. But divert a little bit from what you have been told. Think of this for a moment. A being that by the bite then turns another one like itself. Think of in your Star Trek-y realm. What also does this sound like? This sounds like procreation, like as in a species procreating. But then also what has all the literary literature and all that linked them to? Basically sex, drugs, and rock and roll as well. That's the Queen of the Damned type of material. Then you have your Interview with the Vampire. And there are clusters of them within New Orleans. Your Germain, your Jacques Saint Germain, and Count Saint Germain was and is one of these. But this is actually quite a different tale than what you were expecting. What was said in the previous one with the recombinant virus, creating all these variants and variations, absolutely still true. But here is a new take on this subject. Think a long time ago, and I'm not going to do the in the galaxy far, far away thing, except for that. You have a group of bees that needed to spread, needed to conquer. What were they good at? Genetic engineering. What were they when they came across the threshold? They immediately were vampiric because they were disconnected from source light. You were also told that when one becomes a vampire, they become soulless. That's only partially true. The soul does cleave from the body, and you have an immortal vampire walking the surface as a consciousness. You see, not a soul. But there are instances where the two are bound. Now, stretching into some of your Star Wars myth and lore, there was a species that was outside the Force in that, called the Fiong or Fung in this, whereas the Force did not work on them because they were outside of this reality. Think of this from an Orion perspective for a moment. They create this virus. They create, and some of its variants actually regurgitated on its own, especially on Earth. But they created these vampiric entities, even using Draco DNA, to create the basis by which the regenerative half-life of the virus exists. Like with any virus, once it's outside of a host, it has a half-life. This one has a long one, even if it was a pool of blood on the ground. It will exist within that for a short period of time. Not as short as a lot of them, but it's still for a short period of time. This is also what your secret space program also create vampire soldiers from. Werewolves do. School the Cat, School the Wolf, Witcher, that whole conversation. But they make vampire assassins as well. Or so they claim. They actually have a species helping them out. Backwards again, when the Orions create the virus. Were they able to turn whole populations of people into this? Surprisingly, no. They had to literally tool a species from the ground up, from the whole, they look like this big master vampire that looks like an undead warrior type of thing. Like what you think when you think Halloween. They had to create one as an adapter, let's just say, to be able to turn regular folk. From that, it was a transmutative virus that created a race. Kind of like they have birthers, the Anunnaki do the birthers thing to be able to birth the genetic adaptations through a living woman. This had to be done via something they created that they felt was too strong even for them. But at the same time, they had to spread this somehow. They also had to get rid of the previous adaptation because of the fact, and this is your Orion Codex at work, they were trying to use that to turn people into beings like themselves, but it would not work completely. So they pulled it from the pure darkness area of creation. They pulled it from that codex and turned it into a larger vampire bat-ish looking thing, like you see in your Elder Scroll game. Very Halloweeny in nature. Not the bursting into bats kind of thing. No. That's not even possible. That's just a literary thing, like poof, instead of smoke, it's bats. No. With this, in this, you then take another species and transform them into your desired effect. Very much like in your Star Trek Enterprise, he's saying, whereas a whole species was turned into, via a virus, into a species that had gone extinct called Urquat. That was the name of the episode, I believe. And it became a virus, an airborne virus. So anybody that landed on this one planet became one of those species. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. An airborne version of this was not possible. You'd be in trouble if that happened. It was merely by the bite. This is then what became the basis for some of your vampire tales. Does the soul cleave from the body? Only those original precursor master vampire types or lord types. The one after this, they still retained their soul, but it was bound to Midgard. Well, here, it's how it is depicted in the movie Sinners is exactly how it is. With the way they depict vampires in that movie is exactly how your current rendition is. Some believe it's passed by just a kiss or a saliva or something like that. No, the way they depict it in some of the other movies where they join the bloods of two and therefore there's a half of a virus here and then there's something here, the vampires bit them and therefore they must join. That is how it's in a blood ceremony, a type of deal. Or you see that type of thing repeated across multiple vampire tales. And then also you have the reptilian resiliency in there, a bit of Draco in there. This is how they depict in From Dusk Till Dawn. They depict them as bats, and they depict them as reptilians in the series. The sun. Does the sun harm them? In some instances, does it burn them? Yes and no. Some of it was propaganda so they could walk amongst you. It does weaken them, like it's in the Elder Scrolls game. It doesn't go poof and burn them, but it does weaken them. The solar rays or the ultraviolet rays harm them on that level. It weakens them to where they need their blood faster. And the reason they need the blood is the reason any vampire would need energy. And the reason the Orions needed their energy is because that connection, even though there's a soul there, that connection then is slightly not blocked, but disrupted to where it's an eternal addiction to the blood. It is something they need because they're lacking, like what they say in Blade, they're lacking a form of hemoglobin. The other types of vampires, like your Nosferatu types, those were based on earlier adaptations of the viral contagion. There are families of them that do look like it, like in your Blade too. And also are Draco mark people with the little markings and tattoos, like it was said in the Draco episode? Yes. But so do these vampire houses. There are some houses, but there's also werewolf houses too. So some of the older variations are not necessarily completely gone, but they're not completely coherent either. The most common type around is the type that the myths talk about. The regular booking person that can walk amongst you and hunt. That's what these guys actually look like. And they're out in the wilderness in a cave somewhere. The ones that hang upside down like a bat, there's not too many of those left. There was one he saw in his Witcher 3 Game of the Year edition Wild Hunt where there was one hanging from the ceiling of a vampire bat. That is actually the older type, the one that came before. There's not many of them left. Maybe a dozen, if that. Like in your Skyrim, the big master vampire, look. There's not really a whole lot of that. They have more of a gargoyle-ish appearance because they were made in relatively a hurry, but they were made efficiently as well. But the other one that you know of is literally the one walking the earth. And they turn very few people. They usually just kill them. They want a special property when they turn a person. And then, like your show Moonlight, where there's a sire and there's they consider him a child, like in your Forever Night show, the character of Lacroix and Nicholas Knight, he considered him his son. This is why it's their form of procreation. Even if they were born to someone else, they considered it a parent to son. Or the werewolves would be like pack leader and pack, or you call them prime oraton, the leader. There's not many of that left, but there are packs that consider them children. It's slightly different because there's multiple ones, but they usually want to manicure an individual, like also in your Dr. Sleep, where they got the young girl to be like a vampire in that. That's accurate too, to where they are looshing the energy off of people. They can pull energy off people. There's another type that can literally pull the energy off people with their hands, through their fingers, or like in your Gene Roddenberry's Earth Final Conflict, where you see the claws go in and draw like a vampire. That's another type, but it's not as common. That's another one of those other variations and stages. But again, the literary one, the one where it's like the sexually arousing one, the one that the one that everybody knows, the both male and female, is the legitimate one. And also there was another type. There's the siren mermaid-esque type as well, where he had a dream, whereas he was this pirate captain, where there was this ghost ship where they unlocked the captain's quarters and three gorgeous women come out of there. And the only way they can actually suck the life out of people is if they strip their clothes off and suck it through the skin pores. That's a C type of vampire. It's not a mermaid. It's what was talked about as a mermaid. It's a siren type that is literally cannibalistic and will suck the life out of people. He even saw this where the captain was going after them. They acted all scared and subsequently killed them. He even has the past life memory of having the energy drawn out of the cells in the body. Very much like he saw the Blair Witch spider-like creature, the crustacean creature, come out of the ocean, make a nest with a bunch of human skulls in Blair, Connecticut. And he walked into this wooded area, and then he felt like he was burning to death. And it was the acid from that creature, and they pulled the hemoglobin out, like what was said in a previous channel. This is why some of that legend is bunk, with the cursing of the young girl that the Puritans of that village thought had killed these little kids in the woods. But most of the time, that particular vampire desiccates the whole thing and consumes all of it, but will only sometimes take special hemoglobin out of kids. Very much like your vampire cloud in your Obsession Star Trek episode. Very much like that. It's a crustacean / spider-like that it's from primordial Earth. It's an insectoid type. So that's another type of vampire, but that is one from primordial Earth. Insectoids generally are from Earth. They're not completely alien. But that was from primordial Earth, and that was something that required a large amount of sustenance. It's like a cicada. It comes out of the ocean once every few millennia or so. But again, the traditional type are the ones with the fangs. So, questions?
Yeah, so you talked about a lot of different types, and some were made, but are some different because the being that the virus has taken over?
Yes, it transmutates the person into a particular form. Let's just say you look how you look now. And like in True Blood, where there was a character where that was somebody that worked in an office, his name was Eddie. He becomes a vampire, but he stays in the form that he's in, like somebody that was an office worker. And it just doesn't automatically change you to be in shape. They tried creating that to make it so that you automatically had muscle build and all this other stuff. It didn't quite work out that way. So if you wanted to become a vampire, you would have to then become in shape and then do it. This is why the vampire clans are picky as to whom they turn. They don't want some fat person becoming one of them. They're a bit constrained in their beliefs in that particular area. But say if you were you and then suddenly got infected from this, what would happen? What happens is it transforms you from the inside out to actually gear your cells to turn off the, how can I put this? He's not medically aligned. The way the cells absorb the hemoglobin absorbs oxygenation through the blood, and the hemoglobin also through the blood becomes less enriched. How can I put this? It cuts off a portion of the blood that allows not only for the oxygenation, but allows for the nutrients to go into the bloodstream.
So it sounds like they just are becoming more anemic type.
Yes, you are correct. With this, they literally are sick. And it's like in your Elder Scrolls, where if you don't get blood, if you're the vampire and that you start to look like an old person, doesn't this sound a little familiar? This is your adrenochrome trait. This is something they can go off of adrenochrome, but adrenochrome is a form of vampirism as well. What do you think happens to people that consume adrenochrome? They become vampires. This is part of the vampire contagion. It can be delivered in pill form too. This is a very cruel thing to do to people if you're trying to cure them of something, because if they do not get it again in that pill form, they were trying to find another way to actually consume, and not without having to hunt. This was their middle ground. This is why in your movie Van Helsing, you see the three vampires in it having consumed child's blood. They were talking about Hollywood. There's some of that, but in lieu of that missing, they needed a scientific go-between. Like in your True Blood show, Japan ends up making the drink called True Blood that actually sustains them. Also in your Babylon 5, you had the immortality serum that you find out that people would have to consume one another in order to become immortal. This was what that was hinting at. In this, when this transforms, the teeth do form more of the fangs that humans already have. It's not like all of a sudden, you're having these two in the front or something. In some cases, yes, but it utilizes them almost like straws, and it actually aims not only to drain the other person, but then to deposit venom, like a snake. Hence the reptilian aspect. They needed a delivery system, a venom. When this occurs, the person either dies or turns. But this is where the choice comes in. They don't automatically turn. They have to have the blood join from sire. If the other person does not want that to happen, the person dies. And their corpse becomes ash. It literally burns itself from the inside out. The virus has no second component to join, you see. So if they don't want you to be part of their clan, they just let it burn up to ash, like you see in Blade, where they just go whoosh and burn up. That's exactly what happens. Or in True Blood, where they turn to like goop and strings, essentially, when they staked him, like what happened to the character of Eddie in that. That is sometimes what happens. But it's mainly the blood pressure goes up to the point where the body spontaneously human combusts. But that's the belief is that it's a buildup of phosphorus in the body, which causes spontaneous human combustion. The other is basically it was alien experimentation, do weaponry, and it would build up that. This is a similar process where the body just cannot cope without having the cooling agent in there. That is then presented by a sire vampire, and they put slit wrist to slit wrist. They do that as a ritual to people they want in their clan. And therefore, it then stabilizes everything, very much like in your Earth Final Conflict with the Jaridian and Talon. The two had to be mixed into Atavus in order to be a stable life form. But then what was it? A vampire. So in this, they show the mixing of two things to become another thing. This is what happened. It's the alchemy of this particular viral contagion. It's not as unstable as people believe. It's just that the pickiness, and I'm actually quite thankful, and all of you would be quite thankful that it didn't come up as like the movie Daywalkers, where everybody was a vampire. But they're picky about whom they choose, whom they prey upon, and whom they trust. So they live for centuries. It slows down the metabolic rate. They do age, but what do they look like after thousands of years? They look like Nosferatu, but not all of them live that or have lived that long, and it takes centuries to look like that. So the ones that look like Nosferatu are of an earlier age. They continue to age, but they don't die. Not like your proverbial Jack Harkness from your Doctor Who, where he just becomes a giant head in a jar. No, this is what they become the older they are. So I hope this helped.
Yeah, and just to talk about some of the myth and folklore in humanity's history, um, we we only see it actually go back to the around the 17th century, where there's a lot of information and it's become a real thing to discuss around vampires, and Hollywood has really pushed it. Which, so I ask about the agenda of Hollywood's agenda around trying to make it, vampires are now cool, as well as going back to some of its history and why in the 17th and 18th century it became so prominent and such a superstition that a vampire could get you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Some of it was propaganda, and some of it was true. But they wanted an hysteria behind this so that people would panic. See, this is the reptilian side of things, the looshing. And also, this was a form of disclosure at that time. It was very similar to like your Orson Welles with the alien disclosure at that time. The War of the Worlds thing, how there was panic at that time. But with this, with the vampire hysteria, there was a very real danger of this being a thing. Whereas people were in some areas were beginning to recognize there were differences there. Now, did some of it become heavy superstition, very much like what happened in Salem? Absolutely. Was there the same draconian forces behind these things? Absolutely as well. But the people knew to put certain plants around graves, like vervain, for instance. Vervain is highly toxic to vampires. Garlic, the traditional one, highly toxic. So they actually had that one correct. But then they began to self-farm this and saw vampires everywhere. Again, paranoia, the same with Salem. It burned through them for a little bit. Witch. And it ended up being only maybe a couple of things. So, say it's like in Romania and places like that where they buried people and then had to dig them up and make sure that they weren't a vampire. This was a very real danger because say if a vampire was buried without the head being cut off, without the stake stunning, what I've said before, burning. They took the corpse out and did this, or put the plants over the grave if they were too scared to check it. So when this occurred, say if you managed to stun a vampire by sticking a stake through the heart, what's this look like? This would look like the being's dead, because they are technically undead, because the heart is beating at such a slow rate, you would swear it was not beating at all. The heart still needs to beat to pump the blood. It's not like they're necrotic or anything like that. When you stun, you stop that process. And it doesn't mean you've killed them. It means you put them in the ground, and then somebody at some point removes the stake, and they start to regenerate. Kind of like a Wolverine sort of thing. They regenerate like the superhero to a certain extent. And then what happens? They need blood. They need to, because they are at that anemic stage, and then they kill you. So very much like in one of your Dracula movies on your Netflix program or network, whereas somebody finds Dracula under the water and he immediately has to feed on him because he's been down there for centuries, kind of thing. That kind of thing. Where if you dig one of them up, you have to keep that stake in place. And does silver do something to them? Absolutely it does. They are highly allergic to silver. I have to say it's like in Blade where crosses and crucifixes don't do squat. But silver does an enormous amount of damage. Some UV rays, if you've shined UV light at them, will this harm them? Again, it'll weaken them to the point where you could take care of them. Do they have super strength as a result? Briefly. Do they have the strength of like 5 or 6 men? Very briefly, when they fed. They are stronger. But they are more anemic than anything else. I hope this helped.
Yeah, I something that we learned on GIC in the past here was that beings could enter a home if you had like a welcome mat or something on the front. Is there, and there's a superstition that a vampire cannot enter your home unless invited.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just basically saying the same thing as that's the same with any being with a welcome mat?
You are actually correct, Bjorn, because of this, like in your Renfield movie, the welcome mat showing that Dracula could enter Renfield's apartment. There's actually a truth to this because of the spiritual component behind this. They have to have consent to come in, like what happened in the movie Sinner. They were trying to get that consent over and over. Your black-eyed children are a type of vampire variant where they are more their eyes get really widened and blackened by the time they have to feed on someone. And so some have associated the wide black eyes with telepathic communication because of the grays. That's an Orion connection as well. The Orion grays, where some of them have, like the Zetas have the bigger eyes, and then you have the Orions have the smaller beady ones, but they can go black too. So this is why the black-eyed children are called such. Now, with the invite thing. Now, with regular ETs and regular people, like if somebody was robbing you, if you yelled, "I do not consent," they just laugh at you and shoot you or stab you or something. You have to actually physically stop them. With vampires, on the other hand, they are locked into an energetic magic as well, like you see in Sinners. They are locked into the very step of consent. They need consent of somebody, not necessarily to feed on them. If they're outside, they're out in the open. If they open their door, they're out in the open. Like if they're in a car, they have to be invited in a car. That's why, like with the black-eyed children, they tried to get somebody behind the wheel of their car to open the door for them because the car is still considered a residence since people do live in them, you see. So it's like a traveling caravan. Why do you think some of the old caravans stuck to their like in the werewolf myths, like with the gypsies and everything, stuck to their carts and stuck to their little circle? That's why. So, say if you didn't invite one in and they tried to step through the threshold, they could not do it. They can't do it. Just like also in Sinners, where some of their friends had been turned into them, and they were asking still to be invited in. That's also the nature of this virus. It's not like a normal one that would just seep in. It actually this needs there's a spiritual component to it, an energetic component that requires the inviting of it in. There's a demonic component to it, so you see. So, not as just demonic in general. It is more like how a demon or any of those negative beings must be invited in. In some cases, true, some cases not, or else alien abduction would not take place. Sometimes they're asking the oversoul gives permission, and there's that whole argument of who actually gave consent and to why and what mission the person's avatar is on. That's not what I'm talking about. Say you open your door and you have a mysterious person standing there that needs to come inside for whatever reason. Absolutely must. Don't do it. You don't see it as much, but it does happen in cases that you're not hearing of. This does happen. So, to sum it up, if you encounter one of these, even the black-eyed children, and you're seeing them, don't step out of your door threshold. Do not invite in, no matter what mental telepathy or thoughts are being rained down on your brain. Do not invite them in. Have the mental fortitude to not let them in. Car included in this. In fact, I would probably recommend you run them over, but I'm just saying. It wouldn't kill them. You just get out of there. But they tend to be vindictive too. But in this area, they will literally, if they try to approach the door threshold, they can't, because a home to them is protected as long as you do not give consent to that particular contagion. I hope this helped.
Yeah, it does.
So how much
Um,
literal blood does a vampire need to survive on? Because I would think with all of these different, and it's a very common question, you would think that this can't be hidden. So my curiosity is then how much blood is needed for a feeding, and how often would one need to feed?
Hmm. That's an interesting question. They do raid blood banks all the time, so they don't have to hunt. That's why they also had some scientists invent the adrenochrome thing, so they didn't have to do that. They're kind of lazy by nature sometimes, but at any rate, they need quite a bit. Say the average person that's say between 5'5" and 5'10", and you have a vampire approach them. What would they need to do? Some will consume the entire person depending on what they need and depending how big the person is. But say you have someone as big as himself, they would probably not drain that entire person. They would probably have a couple of them do it. They would need between, if we go in pints, how can we say this? Probably would if it was a smaller person, they would drain the whole thing, probably 5, 6 pints of blood in order to sustain. Would they have to do this immediately every day? No. It's like in your Dr. Sleep, where they actually went for an extended period before they got the loosh mist that they needed from killing that child in the movie. That's the other type that they breathe it in. That's an actual type as well. That's a Draco trait. But the other type, the classic vampire, actually would need almost the entire person. Now, say, why are the ones that do the seducing, like say it's male or female, why do they bother when they're hunters? Because the blood becomes a more favorite when it's at that height, when it actually has either fear in it for some or sexual arousal for others. It's just a personal preference of whatever clan you're dealing with. Some are purely the sexual thing, like you see in the novels, and some are purely the fear thing. Again, that's a Draco trait. Both, just like with the reptilians, they deal with both sexual depravity and fear. So, but with how much do they need? Between 5 and 6 pints, usually, depending how emaciated they actually are. If they get to the walking skeleton stage, they need a lot. They may drain a person completely out of desperation, but since there's so many people, none of them really get to that stage. On an average, they would just drain a couple of pints or a pint from the person, and then not necessarily send them on their way. They would give them a choice: do you become this, or do you die? Now, do they let people walk away that have been bitten at times? Do they actually cure them of the thing? They've been known to, if they don't want controversy as to how many bodies disappear. Some that are living in the back alleys or acting like gang members and stuff in the back alleys somewhere will do things that way so they don't draw attention. And they just wipe the memory of the person by touching their head, like the hot Doctor Who thing where he touches their head. But they just become anemic and they have the bite. That's actually happened. That happens in New Orleans sometimes. If they don't want to turn them and they don't want them to die, they actually make sure they don't burn up. But again, on average, 5 to 6 pints. Now, if they raid a blood bank, which they do, and this has happened more than what you've been told. Again, also why people not necessarily were urged to donate blood, but in some instances where you hear there's a low supply, that means somebody stole it. And guess who will steal it? Them, and also those that want blood samples for cloning, like aliens. Those are usually the two groups: genetic thieves and vampires.
how how many of the cabal, if there is, are vampires? Because we've always understood that the adrenochrome is very much alive in that occult world, and many of them take it, including Hollywood. And if there is, how much of a percentage of the cabal would be have that virus?
It's interesting. It depends on the clan. Like I said, they're ruled by different Anunnaki lords, as you say, and a couple of these are those. So, depending on who the worshippers are and which demigod they are aligning to, but the percentage of the different families that have it, not many. There's also different separations of not only with the different demigods, but the different subsections of Kabbalah's groups. They some like the Hollywoodistic ones. You bet. Some of those are vampiric clans as well. Some of those are your Enlil worshippers. Some are the different Moloch and them. He's more cannibalism. So I guess that there's some vampiric in there, but there are also subsections of these different demigod worshippers that are vampiric. Some won't touch it because some of these people want to walk in the daylight. Even though they can, it would weaken them before. Some want to be able to come and go from places, so they don't want the consent restriction. But there are those diehards that do. So the percentage is actually much lower than you would expect. Now, for a regular person taking adrenochrome, they become a form of a vampire. So those, I guess, fall under that percentage. So I would say, as in hardcore percentage of the totality of the Cabal clans, 25% max are vampires.
Okay. And you, Ozzy, were in the music industry that was around a lot in Hollywood. I think your place was in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
Did you ever come across adrenochrome or were invited to partake in that?
Hmm. Coming across, yes. Partake, no. I actually was in my final years was actually more targeted by these clans because of the fact that may have talked big as the Prince of Darkness. I was not. You see, even though earlier in life I did try to sell my soul to Satan, kind of thing, it didn't quite work because the Oversoul did not wish this. I encountered these things because I was supposed to see them. Did I see some of these things given the style? And I was all about the style, but would I have actually hunted as an undead skeleton? No. And I see adrenochrome affect people? Yes, I did. Uh, did I know about some of these things? Yes, I did. But did I partake? Absolutely not. And this is what drove them to target myself. And this is how I ended up as I did.
Hmm. That's interesting. Um, so it affects different beings, and we know that uh, with Asgardian, with my higher self, Wodar was infected with this contagion. Um, what does it do to an Asgardian ultimately, and why is that something that is, desired for Orions?
Hmm. Interestingly enough, once something has been infected, it remembers. The virus remembers the genetic code by which then it can duplicate. Remember what I said before that it couldn't duplicate muscle mass and also would make the being quite anemic? You add Asgardian DNA in the mix, and that fills the missing link to where they will automatically become in shape as a result. Like you also see with, like, say, Spider-Man with your Tobey Maguire, where he saw he was in shape after he became Spider-Man. It's kind of like that, where without that component, they were stuck in the way they were stuck, like in True Blood, with an Asgardian DNA in there. All bets are off. This is why Odin did not want that passed along as an Asgardian as a vampire, because that virus would remember. It would be a viral memory, and then if that were passed on to a new generation of vampires, they would all be buff, and he did not want this. So, of course, he would not want this. So that would basically, whatever they bite and whatever the virus comes across, it begins to adapt, very much like nano probes would be for the black goo. Whatever it assimilated, it would then adapt to, you see. But then it would assimilate lower things, And like in your Stargate SG-1, where the replicators were grabbing a submarine and they were less advanced, and there was the original alien one that was more advanced. Think of the virus like this too, where it comes across something more advanced, it remembers, but it doesn't backtrack if it bites something less advanced. You see, it would just need more of that. It would need then more pints of blood to retain itself. Again, not what Odin wanted, knowing full well what the hell would happen within the vampire cults. So this is why this was not allowed. I hope this helps.
Mm-hmm. And the Velodians say they have a cure for this.
Hmm.
So if somebody did get infected, ultimately, the Velodians could cure that person, and they would be, or are they somewhat damaged, and they can just somewhat prevent somebody from getting. I'm not exactly sure.
They actually do have a cure for some of the lesser types. The sanguis vampirus, as he calls it, of the greater type, of the one that was the original progenitor one, there is no cure for. The other ones that are regular vampires, there is a cure for it, like what you see in your Elder Scrolls, where you had to go on the quest for the vampire cure, and they were showing soul gem and other plants and other stuff like that. They were showing the way. Basically, they were showing basically you needed an energy source to transmute it back to its original form, or like in your Star Trek Next Generation, where your Pulaski character got that infected. That viral infection that was basically changing her base DNA, and they needed the old DNA to revert back to it, the transporter and the transporter trace. The same type of thing was being shown for the vampire cure in your Oblivion, Elder Scrolls 4. The Velodians were able to cure the regular strain. And they also can make the person immune to it as well, to where their immune system will not burn up. They found a cure to this. They have to be here on Earth in order to implement it. So there are some vampires rampant on Earth, but they are stuck here. Because the ones that were galactic, yes, I said earlier there was a race of them, but they, at this point, yes, they are considered a race, and is the virus sentient? Yes, it is. But at this point, it was considered to be basically a public hazard. And can it be put in aerosol form? Yes. There's just certain planets that people aren't allowed to go to. There's even a zombie planet as well. He called it Zyr, Z-Y-R. That's not the true name of it, where the Orions were testing out zombie contagion, stuff like that before. This was a form of that as well, but it went completely deadened and necrotic. This was a test on a civilization, and also extracting their soul shards. But with the Velodians, they cured the other type. So they come to Earth, they would gladly give it. And it is actually required under your Galactic Federation ruling that it be cured, because this was something the Orions put everybody in danger with. Now, immunity boost. Not necessarily a vaccine per se, but curing the virus will make it so that that person will never be able to be turned. It doesn't mean they can't be killed by a vampire, but wouldn't that pass to a vampire as well? On some rare occasions, the cure has passed to them while they are biting the other person, but it's incredibly rare. It's just easier to aerosol it, or it's easier to inject them or hypospray them with the cure, and then they no longer have that anemic blood disease. Essentially, like what was shown in Blade, where the scientist or the geneticist said, or the blood pathologist said, "Oh, you're just sick. You're sickly. You have a disease." That's actually closer to the mark than anything else.
Right. In a past show, GIC show, we talked to Achilles, and we had talked a little bit about Odysseus, and in the Odyssey of Homer, it talks about that he was drinking the blood, which would then give him the ability to speak to the dead, and then he would be able to talk um, uh, to get some information. Is that again adrenochrome back in the Greek time, or similar kind of thing where they were getting a high or maybe a connection to be able to speak to the dead that way?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there are some forms of the contagion that will allow for that brief connection. Like if you have an immunity to it, it will still boost you some of your abilities. Very much like in your Blade series, where somebody snorted the ashes of a vampire and gained their abilities briefly, even by eating their own skin off, basically like a Wendigo. Essentially, that is the case. There's also a clan of druids that turned into vampires as well and started consuming the chalices of blood to get a greater connection to their progenitors and to the spirit world. So that is actually accurate. You see Odysseus doing. He didn't become one, but also there is ambrosia as well. That is more of a blood-looking substance. It's like a honey, bloodish looking substance. That if you consume that, then you would become a god. It also re-outfits the DNA to become like them, but temporarily. It's up to the other guys out there like Odin and Thor and them whether you stay that way. So, with the blood connection, though, it can actually provide a connection to the spirit world briefly. If it is not outfitted to turn you into something, like if somebody consumed a vampire's blood, they wouldn't automatically become infected. It has to do with the bite and the mixing of the blood to turn you into one. But by consuming it, you are actually connecting more with certain sources of the spirit world. I would not recommend this particular ritual at all, but it has been known to work, and that was what was being depicted in the Odyssey.
Right, right. Well, it makes you wonder how much of this satanic sacrifice and is happening that is specifically to channel the demigods as well as to feed the vampiric contagion.
Hmm. Yes, it's actually quite a bit in your mythology. It pops up regularly within certain rituals, the body and the blood, let's just say. Some of your Christ, for instance, the what you wanted to talk about later, has to do with some of the that type of drug addiction. If refined, goes into your adrenochrome again. If refined enough, you would then be addicted just like a vampire. You wouldn't necessarily turn into one, but it would destroy you and rot you from the inside out if you didn't regularly get the drug. So, and some kids also have this. This could be touched again in your what you want to do later on, but this also this is a form of it, either in powder or type of adrenochrome type of thing. Your black goo was involved a little bit, but this is more of a fix, very much like your like adrenochrome or crack or heroin or something of that nature. They could extract this from children most of all. This is why Hollywood is famous for the adrenal glands extracting it from little children. This is where this actually came from. There was trafficking in that time, and there was the extracting of this chemical. They were taught how to do this from their different sources, usually Saturn and other sources, and also other vampires at the time were teaching them this. Now, here's the kicker. By the time you get to Caligula, he himself was one of these vampires. This is why, at the very end of his life, so many people had to meet him in that back alley and kill him. Everyone he ever knew killed him, including a few senators, even a couple of children. Now, is the myth surrounding it like if you kill a master vampire, you cure the rest of the line? I said there was an energetic component, and that has been known to be true with certain strains of it, especially really old ones, where you kill the master vampire or werewolf and it cures the rest of them. Most of the time, it is not like that. But in this instance, was Caligula? No, he was a regular vampire that he was anemic. Why do you think he had blood parties and all this other crap with sexual garbage mixed in? He was one of these. He was unstable to begin with. Now your how can I put her name? Isis, you call her. I would say she's a progenitor vampire of an older variety from Egypt. Some of this came in with some of the draconian garbage, but she was also one of these. So, but of an older variety. Was she infected back in that time frame? Yeah, I'll say this. There's a lot more to that story than even you've been told. But I will say that she started a vampiric cult in Europe, And also later on, you have your Vril that channeled the Draco and them with Hitler. That was part of this as well. You will find that some of the Nazis had some of these blood rituals as well, but not as common as some of the other paranormal activities and UFO activities they were into. But the this is basically how this functions. I do hope this helps.
Yes, it does. Um, one last question around Hollywood
Hmm.
is there's a lot of blood ritual and stuff where they are really trying to ensure they don't age, and you see that with a lot of actors, especially. How much of that is, and they seem to want to show you in a lot of the music videos now, where you're seeing their rituals and especially around with the blood. What are they intending to do with that? Are they just showing off or showing they're part of the club or what?
Yeah, so they're basically showing you some of the disclosure. Your Michael Jackson wishes to me to relay something. The whole blood on the dance floor routine
Mhm.
was showing there was the floor was coated in blood. Even into the wood of the chateau that was dismantled, and he took that to Neverland. The wood on the floor of his ranch was made from a blood-soaked floor, not only with vampiric rituals, but with sacrificial, all of that. It was over the centuries. Your echidna goddess and your London Bridge and your Lake Havasu City, Arizona, a big sacrificial altar. So these are things that have happened. Your Michael Jackson wished me to relay that briefly. He does apologize for some of the kickback his voice brought about. By the way, he did not intend this. So he apologizes for this left and right. But now with this, do you have any further questions for myself? Another wishes to speak. Mm.
Only one, just the connection with the Mesoamerica time frame and all of that horrific
Uh-huh.
blood sacrificing that was going on and pulling people's hearts out. And how is
Yes.
there any relationship with that area?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. That's Draco, but at the same time, there was vampiric cults galore going on at that time. It spread rampantly through Mesoamerica. It was mostly ritualized, but at the same time, they were trying to get their gods to come back. But at the same time, who do you think took advantage? Draco and vampiric entities at the time. Also, underneath in Mesoamerica, as what was said in the Draco episode, they had their Shabala, or you had your Merope, god of the underworld in Peru. You know, the big reptilian. You also had the reptilian parasites that were on people and some of those statues you were seeing. That's what was there. And also, you had some of your vampires that were there as well. Did the Draco get a lot out of that? Absolutely, they did. But undead, underworld, all of that nonsense that came from that, and your Greek mythology as well, where you had some beings that were of Tartarus as well in your underworld. Now, it was that a play on your Tartarian word and Tartar? Yes, but at the same time saying, oh, there's just death here. Oh, yes, there's death here. But in the meaning they've erased that civilization. But at the same time, they had beings that were underground that were emaciated, which were vampires there too. Not just your three judges and your Cerberus the Hellhound, which was actually a genetic freak, by the way. But you can thank Enlil slash Zeus for that little thing. But that he made Hercules go kill it. But that and grab a bunch of crap he left behind. But in this, Mesoamerica, definitely 100% vampire.
Mhm. What well, I think we're gonna end this now, but the one last question around what Chris was picking up with David Bowie.
Yes, he's the one that wishes to speak briefly to this. I can only allow this for a short time. His energy is not stable. Uh, so he was into some of the vice quite heavily. Oh, but I will Spirit will help filter this if Chris wishes this, which there is a bit of heaviness. So, David, you must filter. You must. All right. Now you like what happened with Michael Jackson. There wasn't a like he started out on a slightly lower rung, and now is now what I have done to spirit with spirit as well. David needs to go through this briefly. Give me a moment to where there is an anchor to his oversoul here. All right. It is now briefly safe to speak to him. Please make it brief, David. Oh, and Michael Jackson wishes you to know people accused him of doing this because of the white thing. No. He had an altar, but it was not that. Thank you for having me on, by the way. The reason I looked the way I did at the end of my life, did I partake in some of these things, these vices, these cultist things? Sometimes. But I also, like Michael Jackson, had an altar. My soul is of the stars. As I said, my story was that of an alien coming to Earth and succumbing to the vices. That would be of a Pleiadian grouping. He is asking to, and he is requiring the race. You would say, the word is nearly unpronounceable, but this would be like what you would call Plagiarin or of that variety. Came to Earth, and your cultists began to twist and get me into vice, things of this nature, because of the vibration, the vibratory frequency by which then I was embroiled in. You would say I came from another dimensionary universe or time frame, but that's not entirely accurate. Freddie Mercury is something similar, where he is now walking the earth as an ET, but then he did pass away as a human. I'm something similar. But did I get embroiled into the vampiric? Yes. Did I get twisted? Yes. How can I put this? Did I live to an older age? Yes and no. It was more of an adrenochromish type of thing. And with this, excuse, I am being blockaded in a moment. This is why I showed myself as like all these figures like Labyrinth, the T figure, all these more elfish type of figures. This is how I look. Excuse, I am garnering too much attention. I do apologize. Like your Michael Jackson did.
The energies are bad right now.
Excuse, this is because they don't like me speaking. I will make this brief. Just know that I was around this, spotted all this just like Ozzy did, and was offed. I will now detach because I am causing you too much blowback. I do apologize. Excuse. All right. Yeah, he was garnering too much attention, so more than Ozzy was. So because he's more of a being that was coming in to deliver information and backing off. He was still in a physical form somewhere. So I believe that what he was trying to say, the reason he was integrated into the reason he's on this kind of quest to get rid of the vampiric thing, like what he said, to cleanse like in his blessing, he said that is because he was around that and got embroiled in it, and now he's out of it. Like Michael Jackson, he was getting out of it. But only Bowie is not spirit; he's ET. So his is a little bit more difficult to get out of. So Isaac at one time did warn me about Bowie for a brief period. He said he was kind, but also had some of this.
Well, it's really weird.
Yeah.
Are you he's still here, could answer a question.
Yeah, he's still around. 'Cause,
I'm just curious, because the energy now has changed.
Yeah.
It's changing.
Yeah, it totally has. I feel
Because it was horrid. So my question.
he's apologizing for that.
Well,
because
but this
it's
is
like,
my question for
yeah.
him. I legitimately believe in the sincerity of what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
How does he handle this ghosting? This is ghosting him. This
Yes.
is weird.
Think of it, he says, as a curse, that he's actually being helped out by spirit. He would say he is infected with he is essentially a vampire. So basically he was infected with this. This is why he's being ghosted. He doesn't like this at all. His soul does not like this. So if anybody wishes to take care of this at this point in time, please help deal with.
Well, I
that.
mean, no
Yeah.
offense. I'm just going to put it right out there. Valodians, hello.
Yeah.
Because
So
if he's up another race, hello.
yeah, he's infected, but he's not evil. So
No, but
it's
I'm just saying, this seems like a job for an appointment with the Valodians.
So I'm actually putting that on this recording now. I'm saying the true benevolent Valodians, please assist with this. I believe that's why Bowie made contact, because he knows that this is a way they can get to him. So I think he was stuck here. So I'm asking the true benevolent Valodians, please come and help him. So I see them actually wrapping him up in like a bag or like some wrapping, kind of like a mummy, but it's more like this silk, like no. Okay. I'm seeing medical personnel with him,
I'm
so
telling you,
yeah.
that's horrible.
There we go. There goes the energy. There it goes up. Okay. Yeah. They're thanking us for that one. I think that's the reason he was saying need to be cleansed in that blessing, is because he needed to be cleansed. Is he was asking for help, is what it was. So thank you. All right, thank you. Chingo, Paradisia, that's you. And Nidan, yes. Yeah. All right. Thank you. All right. Because yeah, he was stuck on Midgard, but they can literally physically remove him. So and they'll just say to the Galactic Federation that, like, if there was a contract, say if they said there was a contract violation or something, saying no, this is just an ET and we didn't want this sickness to spread, etc., etc. So they can deal with that, the logistical legal part of that. But yeah, and let me look real fast before we end this show. I'm going to look up David Bowie. Okay. Okay, when did he pass away? January 10th, 2016. Okay. All right. I see this. Oh, I see why. Oh, this is why he kind of think he looked the way he did. Okay. I'll show this real fast. Okay. Okay. You see here? You see how he has this particular look with the higher cheekbones there. That's usually a reptilian trait, but this is also what some of the vampires I was being shown look like as well, and also some Pleiadian groups as well. This actually makes sense. And does it say how he passed away? Let's see. Cause death. Okay, liver cancer. Okay. So, guys, stop share screen. Guys, how did that equate? Is that a lie, or was that just his organs shutting down from the virus, or did he have to reinvent himself and fake a death? What took place here? A little of all of the above had kind of, he wanted to end the human existence and then move on. It's not unlike Freddie Mercury, where he just went back to his galactic self. This was a bit different, where he moved on, like how you would expect like the immortal vampire to do. Fake death, move on, or actually die and then be reborn somewhere else. Is that it? That they're telling me I'm correct on that. So the soul is not bad. It's he's just sick. So they're taking care of it. So yeah, I'm thinking that's why Bowie reached out. He was reaching out for help, is what it was. So knowing we had a connection to the Valodians. So needed for extraction, he needed a go-between, a medium, to be able to call out to the other source, and that's the galactic loophole that you guys are saying. All right, that's a little anal, but retentive, but you probably guys could have grabbed him before, but okay, whatever works. But yeah, I had this feeling with him. People almost expected that from Ozzy, and Ozzy was the exact opposite of that. So it was like Ozzy was a real easy to channel. Bowie, difficult. That was hard. So, but I recognized his soul was being genuine to me. So there was a binding there, a binding to Midgard. A bound being will attack and drain if they're trying to get help. And the most that came out of this was a bogged down energy, but you get the idea. I don't know, Bjorn, if you have anything to add to this before we end the show this time. But
No, just that. Yeah, you can definitely pick up the darkness, but I do want to make sure that we're not bringing in some darkness or some beings and getting lied to. We on GIC want to really focus on the truth and getting the right information, so we don't have to backtrack later
Mhm.
to ensure
Yeah.
the truth of what they're saying. So I know that we didn't get much information from David, but we got a lot from Ozzy. So we'll thank you for that.
Yes, and I completely agree. I don't want to have to redact any information later on or backtrack or anything.
It was too dense.
It was just way too dense, and
But I do believe the sincerity of what he was saying, but it just didn't matter.
he was being sincere, and I could clearly tell it was David Bowie, but there was a something very wrong there. At the very least, no matter what was said before, there was something very wrong there. So at least there's some help on the way there. So of any kind. So Joanne, do you have anything else to add here?
Nope.
Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. You're going to see some changes to GIC at some point. Stay tuned for that. But this is our Halloween episode, so hopefully you enjoyed this. And I now close this circle within true benevolence and no conflicting agendas as of this moment in time. So thank you, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
All right, that was interesting, but man, that hurt. Ooh,
Yeah.
that was painful, actually. It was right in the chest.
Yeah, you don't need to put yourself through that, Chris, if you don't,
Yeah,
don't
that
feel like you
hurt.
need to do it for us at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Ozzy
So,
filtered it because he knew David had something important to say, but he was
okay.
not a fan of it really. It was he's
Well,
like
it didn't last very long.
it was like a few minutes, so it
It
wasn't.
just
Yeah,
didn't last very long because it was too much ghost in him.
yeah. There's too much ghost in him and too much vampiric garbage. It was like that with Michael Jackson, where there was at one point I would never have channeled him, and then he hit a stage where he was fine. So it was Bowie just needs to hit that, regardless of what his physical avatar is somewhere, regardless of the soul connection. It just needs to be corrected. But yeah, it that hurt. That made my teeth hurt. Yeah, but I knew he was apologizing. He goes, "I am so sorry for that. I didn't want that. But I could clearly tell he was being genuine in that area. But he was closer to ghost frequency than anything else. But yeah, Ozzy, great. It was like he was way up there. And there were a bunch of others around as well, uh, trying to blockade during the show. I could clearly see that. Yeah, that was cool. That was interesting. So
Yeah.
I mentioned the bit of the Christ origins and stuff like that, having blood and vampire ritual in there. So, and
Yeah.
that makes sense by the time you hit Caligula, how that got rampant. That makes a little bit of sense.